this is like a cozy family gathering kind of a feeling. Thank you so much for making it. I know it's a Tuesday, working day, carving out time, though this is a very, very important topic. And I think some of you remembered a couple of sessions back. We do the Thai Empower Women series regularly every month. So I think it was 2 months ago that I had met you, Meredith, and Meredith introduced this topic, and she said, let's next time think about doing a session on mental health, particularly because women founders and leaders, especially, you know, with the idea of leaders and founders, it's such an important topic, and we need to normalize the conversation, and we need to have this conversation. I absolutely loved it. Checked in with a few more people in the crowd, in fact, the very next time, and I found that people do feel the need to have this conversation. Having said that, I need to be really open with all of us in that it's not a conversation that comes easily for many people. People are still, there is friction in accepting the discussion at all. And I think, you know, there is work that we need to do in this space. And who better to have us lead in this conversation on the work that we do here with the two people who have spent a lot of time in this space. So thank you very much for coming here and being part of this. I have to say that today we are all here together. This is a safe space. This is a space where all of us can really vocalize everything that is in our mind. So do feel comfortable. And if you want to continue with the conversation, or if you want to reach out in any way, please feel free to reach out to any of us. I don't claim to be an expert in this, but I do some amount of work in this space, but there are people whom you could talk to about this topic. I have to also tell you, and I think we decided that we should warn you that we are going to share some case studies, some real examples. Of course, it comes with permission, so permission has been granted for us to share those case studies. So let's just be aware that there is going to be sharing happening, and you know, it's again, as I said, an open and safe space. So how about if I hand over to you to introduce yourselves, please? And really, please share with us what made you get into this field. You know, what got you into this? What is the reason behind this? So maybe we could start with you, Dr. John. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, thanks, Pratima. So yes, I'm John. I'm from Thoughtful, and Thoughtful is basically a digital mental health startup. Now I know some of you were wondering what is digital mental health, right? To put it very simple, what we try to do is we try to use digital tools to simplify access to mental health care. It's as simple as it gets, right? And part of this simplifying is really about educating people about what mental well-being is, and then ensuring that we connect the right people to each other. So the professionals to the users, right? So that's primarily what I do. About myself, I guess to be honest, I wasn't always a counselor. So I started off as a molecular biologist. It sounds cool, but not a very cool job, to be really honest. And I think someone was telling me earlier, you know, was it Dalai Lama who said, if you sit in a room, if you think you're too small to make a difference, sit in a room with a mosquito, right? I've literally sat with mosquitoes. No joke. So I was working with malaria, and we had to catch mosquitoes. And there was one day that I was, you know, literally sitting at night and trying to catch a mosquito. And we do something called human baiting, which means we roll up it's a cool name to say we actually roll up our pants and wait for the mosquito to come. And then really, no joke. So that's how it's done. It's one of the ways it was done. And I remember that moment when I was sitting there at night and wondering, what the hell am I doing with my life, right? And I've always had the curiosity to want to, you know, discover things, study, and, you know, find out more. But then at that point, I also had a sense of meaninglessness because I thought that I was doing something that wasn't as meaningful as I intended it to be in some ways, right? And so that's when I thought, you know, I wanted to understand more about my own thinking, about my own thought process. A few other things also happened, and I also experienced, I would say, symptoms of depression. I myself was not diagnosed, to be honest. But I did experience moments where I thought, you know, things were really not going really well. And I decided that I would want to pursue something more related, or something that I I would say, stand by a lot more. And that's when I did my master's in counseling, and then I went on to my PhD in social psychology. So, and along those lines, I think I met Joan, the founder of TOEFL, and that was like 3 years ago, and here I am. So yeah, that's my story in the briefest sense possible. I'm going to pass it on to Meredith.
Okay, I'm going to out-brief you.
Sure.
I'm going to be faster than you. we work quite closely together, John and I, so expect teasing to happen. Hi everyone, I'm Meredith. I am a strategist and change management expert through my company, Growth Ensemble. Prior to launching Growth Ensemble, I was chief of staff for a holdings company comprising venture capital, private equity, multifamily office, etc. And I'm also one of the 4 founding members of Epic Angels, which is a 350 plus, Pratima joined this week, member plus of female investors, so accredited female investors. We founded Epic Angels on the understanding that in order to see more women funded, we needed to have more women who could fund, right? Because women are both underrepresented grossly within the PEVC investor world in terms of decision makers. And that has a big knock-on effect in terms of people, women receiving investment. Anyway, back to my why. A couple of things. I'll start at most recently and just say, as chief of staff, I'm a wartime chief of staff. I'm the person that you call when you've got a big problem, right? Crisis management, business continuity, 3 restructures, all the rest of it. I've done strategy for governments. I've done, strategy in times of crisis. What I found is that when people are not supported from the back in terms of having the right culture, having the right environment to be able to thrive, which includes having solutions like Thoughtful, that change is very much resisted. And in order to have effective strategy, you need to take people on that journey with you, have the correct change management programs in place, but that's not going to help you if people are all nailed up and can't, be free to feel and to emote. Yeah. My background, so my why, I've been in mental health as an advocate, public advocate, both in the Middle East and North Africa, as well as over here, probably for going on 10 years now. It's something I feel very passionately about. I've seen a lot in my time. And my why is just, I remember when my best friend said to me when I was going through a really hard time when I was 14, she said, mental health is a luxury. And those words have always stuck in my mind. And I've never really understood why the stigma, so I'm pretty determined to fight it.
Wow, that's super powerful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Meredith. What I'd like to do now is in the next few minutes, lay a foundation about what is mental health exactly. So I'd love for you to please help us understand what is mental health in the workplace. Maybe we could start with you, Meredith. Please define how we should be thinking about mental health in the workplace, especially for leaders and founders.
Okay, so I will cover the part about what does mental health in the workplace look like. But I think that if I actually might just quickly bounce to John for a sec, because language matters. People talk about mental health, they talk about mental well-being. What is what? And John, I know that you have a perspective on this.
Yeah, so I think, I like the title of today's event. It's called Deconstructing. And I think sometimes it's important to deconstruct mental health itself, because oftentimes when we talk about mental health, you think about things like schizophrenia, like major depressive disorder, right? But it's more than that, really, because when you talk about physical health, right, you don't necessarily talk about sickness. You talk about well-being, right? And I think the same applies with mental health. It's a spectrum, and we have to look at it as more than just an illness, right? And I think probably one of the most striking examples I could give is when we spoke to one of the HR leaders, and we had this really striking response, right? The leader was like, maybe it'd be better if my people didn't use your service because that means my people are healthier. And mind you, thoughtful is a preventive service. So, and it's quite interesting. I mean, we cover the whole spectrum, of course, but the app itself is preventive, right? And when you say that it would be better if someone does not use it, it sort of reveals the idea of what people think mental health is. It's more of you're sick, something is wrong with you. Now, I think it's important to deconstruct that because it's not just that, right? So how many of you have undergone stress before, right? All of you, right? I'd be surprised if even one of you has not, right? And the thing about mental health is really, the difference between mental illness and something like stress is that if you go through stress long enough, you'd find yourself on the other end of the spectrum, right? And so then the question is, how quickly can we respond to incidences like this? And really the key is to go towards the preventive side of the spectrum. Now, I'm not gonna take the
I'll take it from here.
from
So what does it look like? What does good mental health look like in the workplace? Pratima, I would say, pardon?
Sorry?
Oh, I thought you were whispering to me. No. I would break it down to two elements. I mean, I'm sure there's many more, but I'm just going to focus on two. And John, feel free to join in, with any of these aspects. Number one is psychological safety. It is fostering an environment where people are comfortable to be themselves, where opinions or perspectives or words that are shared are respected, where people feel heard. What else would you add to psychological safety in the workplace, John?
Well, I think it's about being safe to express ideas. And I think that's important because psychological safety is somewhat essential to creativity. So if you want a creative workforce, you need a psychological safety.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I've seen some things in my time where, you just see creativity inhibited. Big problem in this region, especially with the scolding culture. So you think about how in a psychologically safe environment, maybe assumptions are made, not all of the facts are straight. Maybe a psychologically safe environment is, for example, asking somebody about the why before you start jumping on the what or what you think the problem is. So psychological safety is one. The other aspect of what I believe, and I did spend quite some time thinking about this because I was managing some big challenges through COVID-19. And this is often a blind spot of leaders and founders, actually. Like, yes, we're going to have a lot of time for talking about the challenges that founders have, but founders and leaders need to embrace a culture of what I call mutual empathy, right? Respect being earned and so forth. But when a leader is empathetic towards their team, and their team members and can understand and ask the right questions and ask for perceptions and listen, all of these things that make up a psychologically safe environment, that will be reciprocated as well. Then it becomes a lot easier for that founder to garner the empathy that they need from their team to better perform or to take on this new strategy or to consider these sorts of different tactics. So fostering a culture of mutual empathy, I think, has been, in my experience, absolutely mission critical to change and to growth.
Yeah, that's super powerful. And when we talked about strategies and approaches before we, in our run-up when we chatted, you talked about the preventative method versus the curative method. I think you mentioned that also. So tell me more about this. Tell us more so that we understand that. And then if there are any case studies or any approach, real stories that you can share with us, I think that will bring it to life for us.
Yeah, sure. I'll share the case studies, and I think John can talk about, preventative, versus curative. I do want to expose John's words quite a lot throughout this because at the end of the day, like, he is he's a psychologist, he's trained. I'm an advocate, and whatever. I'm going to give you 3 examples, and I'm going to lead from preventative, And I'm going to go through curative, and then I'm going to go one step beyond. 3 case studies. Number 1, we talk about deconstructing mental health. You know, mental health being such a big taboo subject, but if I said to you, who's got some issues in their relationship, or who's ever had like a really tough issue in their relationships, or with their kids, or maybe, you know, parents with health issues, or family members where you just feel really distracted? How has this affected you? And maybe you've gone into work and goodness, you've got a short fuse, or you just feel really quite distant. And then, you know, when somebody comes up and says, oh, well, we need to do this, you can't really find it in yourself to care. You know, that is a situation where you would need, you know, some preventative assistance potentially, just to help guide you through some of these difficult times. We talk about deconstructing mental health. We're talking about the problems that people face day in and day out of their lives. And when this preventative treatment and being in a supportive culture and talking about psychological safety, when we're in that sort of environment, then people can share a lot more and people can find the support. There was a recent Gallup report came out 2 weeks ago, global workforce study, showing that employee loneliness in the workplace is huge, and it's a really like emerging trend, obviously post-COVID and so on and so forth. So having like a good network of people around you, you know, within the workplace is also really, really beneficial. And the reason I say this is because you can't just plug and play, right? You can't just bring in like thoughtful and think that all of your problems are going to be solved. You know, I'm an angel investor in thoughtful, right? Obviously, it's in my interest to be like, yeah, you know, use it, but no, it's not, and it's the be-all and end-all. No, it's culture as well, and making sure that you do no harm, you know, within the workplace to other people's mental well-being. So case study 1 is just your everyday garden variety problem that each and every one of us have that takes our focus away from where we want it to be. That's your preventative side. Case study 2. I was working with a wonderful, wonderful woman. I really, really respect her. She's absolutely brilliant at what she does. Stress levels got so great and she was not seeking treatment. She was in another country presenting a very important business strategy to a very important client. And she had a breakdown there and then in the client's boardroom. And she could not leave the client's boardroom. Her husband had to fly in from another country. We couldn't get her out of the boardroom. Her husband had to come in and fly in and bring her back. She was out of work for a year after that, recovering, right? And that's where we're very much into curative. The last case study I'll share with you was a very dear colleague of mine. We both left the same multinational company at the same time to start up our respective companies. He was working he was working upstairs with his team. We were in the same building. I was downstairs with my team. We had the same clients. We were doing some wonderful work together. It was so cool because my team would go up to ask them questions. They'd come downstairs. And as founders, right, it's a lonely, lonely path to tread, right? There's a lot of stress. It's awful. And we need, you know, others around us that can sort of help share that journey and exchange war stories and all the rest of it. Anyway, so we used to do that. Long story short, I was in New Zealand and I had a call from his second in command, who remains a good friend of mine, to say that he jumped off the building, killed himself. Married, 3 kids, found the journey, just, that's not curative. Do you want to speak any more about preventative or curative?
To be honest, I think that's very eloquent. So those cases, I think, it sort of very eloquently put those, basically putting faces to the whole spectrum, right? But I guess the challenge is this, right? The challenge is to be able to see not three persons, but those three persons could be the same person, right? Any one of us could be on the preventive side. We could be on the we could be on the curative end, or we could be on the crisis end as well, right? Oftentimes we tend to segment these things and think that, this would happen to other people, not to me, right? But the fact is, there is really no major difference between the person who takes his own life versus the person who has relationship issues and stress. In fact, it's just, the only difference I would say is time and access to mental health care. It's time and access, and of course, when I say access to mental health care, I also mean access to social networks, to people, to really any form of support that you could possibly get, right? So I think when it comes to deconstructing, part of that deconstruction is to understand that, yes, boxes are there, but boxes don't always apply, right? So we can think of it as, crisis, curative, preventive, but it could be the same person going through all three boxes at different times of their lives, right? And so sometimes we need to look beyond the boxes. We need to be able to deconstruct the categories to understand that it could be you and me. It could be anyone, yeah? And yeah, I'm not going to add any more to the case studies. I think those are wonderful. So thanks, Meredith.
Is there any advice that you can give? Everybody in this room are all leaders or founders. So specific to us, any practical advice that you can give us on strategies and approaches? And I believe also strongly that it's necessary to get more people into this conversation. So maybe, you can give us some thoughts around that as leaders. What do you suggest?
I'll let John talk about the more sort of the clinical approaches to, and some of the experiences maybe that, he can share. A key piece of advice from me as, as a founder myself, is to make, and from what I observe with other founders as well, make sure that you have a circle of friends, right? Have different friends for different reasons, right? You have your professional friends, right? Find fellow founders who are going through it as well. When I hear about some of the stories that Joan, Thoughtful CEO, shares, by having conversations with other founders, she realizes that she's not alone in her journey, right? And that the struggles that she's going through are not because of her, not unique to her, because generally founders are also quite high performance people that will self-examine and be really super critical about themselves as well. So another tip would be to watch that critical voice also. Have friends that have got nothing to do with work, right? Yeah. But make sure that you have a social circle. And if you don't, go out and get one. Go to a stand-up comedy night, right? Have other hobbies that aren't just work as well, and go to, events and things like that where you can meet people. The other thing I'd also strongly recommend for founders is if you don't have a mentor, do try to find one or two. I think that would be my advice.
So basically, stave off loneliness. Be part of the... And particularly for startups and founders, I know all of us know this. It is a very lonely journey, and even if you are with a co-founder, with a group of people, you still realize that you are alone. You're standing on the peak on your own. So I think this is so powerful that finding your tribe, finding your community is so critical. Yeah, thank you. And sorry, I was interrupting you.
No worries. I mean, I don't think I have more nuance to add to that, but maybe just to add another point as well, aside from just loneliness is definitely one of the key things. I think the second key thing is also a feeling of inadequacy. So, especially when you go and present your pitch again and again and, potentially get rejected, you may not hit certain goals whatsoever. I think one of the studies talked about feelings of inadequacy among founders, right? And one of the key things was basically that as a founder, you have a vision, right? And most of the time, your vision is something new. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a founder, right? And the thing about having something new as a vision is that you don't have a yardstick to compare against, right? And the problem with feeling inadequate is that usually you try and feel adequate by comparing yourself against the general population. Now, as a founder, you don't have that. And I think it's important to acknowledge, first of all, that this is really part and parcel of it. You don't have that, and maybe you don't need that. Maybe the yardstick is you, who you were yesterday, right? And I think that's part of the comparison here. Aside from that, I think the other question was also about inclusion, right? How do we have more inclusive conversations about mental well-being? And I think really the first step as founders is to ask yourself if you're really convinced, right? And to give you maybe one reason of why you should be convinced, I think that at the core of any startup is the need to be creative. It's the need to be fast, to be able to pivot fast enough, to be able to, see things and come up with creative solutions, right? And at the core of creativity is psychological safety. If you cannot create a safe space for your team and yourself, you're not going to be feeling safe enough to innovate, essentially, right? And what does this lack of psychological safety feel like? Right? What it feels like is basically this. I have ideas, but I'm not going to tell you because my ideas are too stupid, right? And if you have an organization where everybody's thinking that, you're not going to get any new ideas because people are just going to tell you what they've always been telling you, something you can possibly find from ChatGPT maybe, right? So if you really want to nurture that space, you have to be convinced that psychological safety is important, it is necessary, right? And then once you have that buy-in, like you yourself have bought into that idea, then the next step would be to have more conversations about mental well-being. And this is where, it's really about being open with your own workforce. It's also about having, loosening up some of the restrictions, right? So for example, at Thoughtful, we don't really need a medical cert all the time. That's one of the things, right? So you don't really need, if you want a break, and if you're just not feeling like it, just tell your boss and go on a break, right? And I know that in bigger organizations, it's a bit harder because there are rules. But in startups, really, I think there's a little bit more autonomy in this sense, right? So really, it's about understanding how much we can reduce the unnecessary rules because sometimes it's inversely proportional to productivity itself. Yeah, and these are all proven facts. So I think it's important to see what can be done in a realistic sense. It's not just about how you feel, but realistically, we need to understand that people are actually stressed because there's actual work to be done. And sometimes it is a trade-off, right? So the question is, how much are we willing to sacrifice? How much are we willing to let go now for the long run, right? And these are all very, very serious questions, which I think every founder has to answer at some point, yeah? So I think that would be at the core of creating more dialogue around mental well-being.
I love it. I love the point that you made about creating a safe space and being deliberate about it. I think we must also add and acknowledge that it needs to be agile, right? You need to be quick at it, and it cannot be something that you're going to think about for a long time and then finally execute, because you never know what the other person needs immediately. So there has to be a sense of urgency also, I think, in the dialogue. You both are startup founders. You've both been in the startup ecosystem so much. Anything from your personal experience, any tactic that you have been using which you think has really been helpful for you? Can you share it with us?
I'm actually going to borrow from Thoughtful CEO Joan here, because she said this and it really resonated with me, and it's advice that I've since given to other founders. Joan made this lovely point about dealing with pressure and multiple expectations as a founder. So she said, just remember that as a founder, there are seasons, right? You can't be doing everything at A+ level all of the time. So this comes back to sort of feelings of inadequacy and so forth. Don't try and be a superhero. She was like, maybe at one particular time I'm going to be focused on the next round of funding. I've got a 1-year-old child, so therefore at the moment exercise, that's probably a 3 out of 10, if that. Sometimes relationships are going to need more time. Sometimes work is going to need more time. So she just made that point of just keep a check on reality and understand, like, don't be so hard on yourself, and understand that there is an ebb and flow like the seasons to different aspects of your life. And sometimes you are going to have to place your focus in areas that you may not want to be placing so much focus in. Yeah.
Anything from you, Dr. John?
Yeah, if there's one thing I could add, I think it's having also a sense of objectivity about your own performance, which is not easy because oftentimes we tend to compare externally, right? So I think what Meredith, you mentioned earlier also about having a mentor, I think that helps because you need someone who knows you well enough so that the comparison point can be a bit more personal. Even if it has to be external, there is an objective third party, so to speak, right? And then the ultimate thing is to always compare yourself with who you were, you know. And I think that's really, I would say that's very important, not just to startup founders, but literally to anyone. If you want to improve your self-esteem, you need to ask yourself, how objectively are you evaluating yourself, right? And I think that's probably one of the things to think about, yeah.
Clear vision when you're looking at yourself also. Very nice, yeah. Can I open it up for any questions from the audience? Anybody has any thoughts? I know it's a very deep topic and all of us have been contemplating all the words that have been, spoken, but would love to see if there's any thought. And yeah, can I give, there's a mic behind you.
Hi. Dr. Pinto just mentioned about evaluating, oneself. Clinically, how would you sort of describe where the danger signs are? I mean, one, what is it that one should watch out for? I feel stressed, but how should I measure stress? Where does it become something concerning? Where should I seek external help?
That's a fabulous question.
Yeah, so there's two parts to this really. I mean, if you're talking about clinically, then you have your self-report scales. Depression, anxiety, and stress scale is one of them, DAS 21. 21 questions, you could answer them yourself. And then,
Is that like if you Google DAS 21, you'll be able to find them?
Literally.
So there's one actionable tip there. Yeah. DASS 21.
Yeah, so that's one way to sort of measure your own perceived level of stress, right? But I think to deconstruct stress a little bit further as well, it's not a question of is it stressful enough, right? It's almost like, it's almost when we ask the question, how stressful do I need to be in order to seek help? It's almost like, there's a meme that's going around, right? How much poison do I need to take before I die, right? It's the wrong question. So I think the moment you can sense that, things are not as it used to be, your own baseline, right? The moment when you sense that things are not as it used to be, you might want to start picking up certain practices. So I would say one practical thing that can be done to, for example, reduce stress almost immediately is to have a practice of reflecting on good things that have happened to you, right? And this is something that works when you do it every day because it's something that builds up. But, having a journal, for instance, like 3 good things, these are things that are, I would say, more or less helpful. But if you do find that you're at a point where you really need to speak to someone, this is where leaning into your social circle helps. But also reaching out to a professional actually does help. Yeah, and this is also partly why we developed Thoughtful, right? Because one of the things about Thoughtful is that it connects users to mental health professionals through a very simple way, which is through text. Like you don't need to actually see the person yet. You could just text the professional, and you could have quite a decent conversation through text itself. Yeah, and I guess why I'm bringing this up is also because there's a problem of stigma. Usually, when you need help, when you have a flu and you start sneezing, you would probably go to the 7-Eleven and get a pill, right? Now, the problem with mental well-being is that it's like we try, because of stigma, we try our best to delay it as much as possible, which is why we ask questions like, how stressful is stressful enough, right? But you don't really ask that when it comes to a flu, right? So I think what's important here is to understand that if you need to seek help, do seek help, do reach out, yeah? And really, part of combating the stigma is to be able to talk about this a lot more in more places, in conversations like this, essentially. Yep.
This is very powerful, Dr. John. Not being able to recognize the signs sometimes, even in yourself, can be something that could lead us down a path. And I agree. I mean, at times, I myself have gone through this when I've had stress and not realized that I'm being, super stressed, right? And it's so critical for us to be able to be so sensitive to what's happening inside us, so that it immediately triggers that, look, I probably need help here, right?
I was just going to add to that, but very briefly, to say that there are some things that we know, and founders really they over-index in terms of mental health issues. If you find that your eating habits have changed, maybe you're eating a lot less, you're skipping meals, maybe you're eating too much, you're comfort eating. What is your sleep? What is the quality of your sleep looking like? What is the quality of your social life like? Are you having conversations with people? Are you connecting with your friends, or are you withdrawing? How's your drinking? Are you leaning too much into the bottle? So there are definitely some things that we can, sort of keep checks on. Yeah, absolutely. So you have a question?
Actually, I have a couple of thoughts and a question as well. I think one of the things when we speak of a spectrum, I guess we're all looking inward, right? We're all trying to align ourselves with the person that we're speaking to. And if it doesn't fall into that alignment, we start nomenclaturing that person. So I would in fact go ahead and say there is no spectrum, everybody is different, all right? The other thing I wanted to talk about was, as founders and leaders, we all talk about stress for themselves. But I think another important part of a founder and a leader's journey is managing their own teams, right? Now, while we're going through stress, how empathetic are you towards your team, right? And when do you realize, or when do you see those signs in some of those teams? Because as founders and leaders, you're all type alpha personalities. You have a certain vision that you've come with. And to get people to align to that vision and move forward is a difficult journey, right? So that was the other thing. I had a specific question for John Pinto before.
Sure. I would love to have a chat with you on that point, though. Yeah. It's very important.
So, Doc, one of the things, right, so my son was diagnosed with ADHD anxiety at 19 after he went into NS, all right? Is there, in Singapore, is there a way that we can get kids tested much early as a mandatory practice, maybe around 14, maybe when they clear their PSLE, or they get into sex school, right? Is there anything on that can be done from your industry knowledge?
So I do know of a few, thanks for the question, by the way. So I do know of a few centers in Singapore itself, and we could talk about that later as well, that actually do testing for kids, right? Now, as a mandatory practice, I really can't comment on that at this point, yeah? So I'm not really certain as to, how much is it, how much is it part of the legal governance framework. But I do know that there are avenues where this can be done, yeah? So myself, I'm more of a counseling psychologist and a social psychologist. The one who does this, usually they are clinical psychologists and psychiatrists. But I do know of a number of places where this can be done. So yeah, the answer is yes.
And I think you just touched on a point that was really important in terms of what can founders do to sort of better support their teams. I think this comes back to the point earlier about mutual empathy, but I'm glad you raised it because you asked me a question of what I would have done, sort of differently, what my experience has been as a founder, and I gave an experience, like a recommendation from Joan. I made a mistake as a founder in my second company that I think that founders, it's a mistake I'll never make again. And I'd love for other founders to learn from my mistake so that they can not make the same one, which was I held the team to my standards. And I expected that the team would look at the business, 'cause it was a small business, that they would look at the business through the same lens as I did, and give the same amount of, passion and energy and determination and, and all of that. But an employee mindset is a very different mindset to that of a founder. So, look, if you've got people on your teams that are employees that can bring that level of passion, commitment, to the team, then fantastic, hold on to them for dear life. Otherwise, consider ESOP. But sort of that notwithstanding, have empathy for the fact that you're hiring people who don't necessarily want to run that same, course that you're running, right? That they may want to have a job where they can turn up from 9 till 6, and on occasion, if we have a sprint or something like that, work a bit harder, etc. But they are actually two professionally different professional lifestyle paths. They're different. So thanks for raising that.
Very nice.
Hi.
I have a question. at the back.
Sorry. Just, I'm trying to not make this sound like a plug, but also to share. Our company does voice analytics, prosodic waveform analytics, and there are a lot of physiological biomarkers that are embedded in the voice when it comes to psychological conditioning, things like stress markers, burnout, things like emotional stability, mental stability. So our company does a lot of that. We have a free tool online. You can, if you want to talk to it, speak for about 30, 40 seconds, you can get a lot of these biomarkers out and then see if you are burnt out, if you are very stressed, if you are, so we use that tool a lot in our own company, and of course we sell the tool to companies and corporations. But I'm not plugging, I'm just sharing that such things are available if you are, especially mental wellness, because it's something that is so hard to, it's not something people bring up. It's like you can't see that a person is stressed, but there are physiological biomarkers that exist when a person is burnt out, stressed, emotionally unstable. And these are things that maybe you can integrate, to find out more.
You should have a chat with John after the show. Very interesting, sort of like mood recognition, but for the voice. Definitely some ethical concerns, questions that would need to be answered around that in terms of permission-based within a workplace. But thanks for sharing that. I know there was a couple of other questions over here.
What's the name of the company?
Inside Genie? Inside Genie. Okay, great.
Hi, going back to the comment that he made actually about how, as a founder, your team members might be going through stress. Taking a step back, so it could be MNCs or in a startup environment, how do you have that difficult conversation when you notice that someone is actually going through stress or you feel that they're taking too much on themselves without having that stigma? So how do you break that barrier?
Couple of things. I think that the most valuable piece of advice I was given was from this wonderful woman called Tamala Scotcher, who is the CHRO, so Chief Human Resources Officer for an MNC that I was working at. And she just said to us, as she said to me one-on-one and as leaders, she had this practice of whenever somebody was underperforming or whenever it looked like there was a problem like that, not necessarily a mental health problem, it could be a performance problem, because a lot of mental health problems in the workplace actually mask themselves as, or the symptom of it is then performance issues. As Puneet and I were talking about, a little earlier today, which then starts to roll into performance issues of the company. I mean, you can read yourself for this, the stats that out there on the internet to see in terms of trillions of dollars lost each year due to productivity as a result of mental health. Just asking somebody how they are, right? Before you go into the conversation of, this is what I'm seeing that's wrong at work or with your performance or anything like that. So when you see something, before you start scolding or getting into the weeds on the work, simply ask them how they are.
I think to also add to that, I think, yes, it's as simple as asking how you are, but to add to that also, I think we talk about the barriers that are caused by stigma, but I think there's also the relational barrier between the manager and the employee, right? And I think because when I came into Thoughtful, it was probably like my first intense exposure to management role, and this is like 3+ years, like, you know, a few years ago. I did have experiences leading teams before, but it wasn't as intense as leading a team in a startup, to be honest, right? And what I learned was this, right? After some time, I learned that there was a part of me that was trying to be the manager at work, and that part of me sort of masked the real John, you know, the real me, right? And because of that, there was a distance between me and the people I led, right? And this is more of a relational distance. Now, I'm not saying that you need to, you know, throw away your function. Like, of course, you have a role to play in the organization, but it's also important to be as real as you can, and to acknowledge that sometimes, you know, even when you feel like, you know, a bit awkward when you're having conversations that are not work-related with your staff or with your employees, right? That awkwardness is actually a sign of the rapport between you and them. Yeah, so I think that's like, it's important to recognize that, like, really, I'm feeling awkward because maybe my relationship with them isn't where it should be, right? And I think that once we have that relationship barrier transcended in some sense, the issue of talking about difficult topics like mental well-being, I think those issues will solve itself. Most of the time, that's the case, right? But of course, you know, it still requires you to ask the simple question of how are you? Yeah.
Love it. Kamini, you have a question.
I have one question. So basically, once you have figured out, let's say for myself or my employees or my even relatives, right, that they need professional help, I think what challenge I came up with was to finding like what kind of professional help to go for. Because when you search on internet, there are like plethora of like, you know, suggestions. And I was looking for a counselor for my brother who was going through relationship issues. And I got him engaged to multiple counselors, and looked like none of it worked. And then they would ask for, like, you know, getting 10 more sessions for this much price. It has a price attached to it as well, right? And my brother just completely lost, like, you know, faith. He's like, they're just trying to make money by increasing the number of sessions and stuff. They don't understand my problem. They just want to make business. So yeah, I think the problem that I faced was that I wasn't able to find the right counselor for my brother, while I still knew that he needed help, and our family counseling wasn't helping.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. I think those were, among other things, those were some of the problems that we were trying to solve when we started Thoughtful as well, right? So our way of solving that problem was to increase the diversity of professionals within our pool so that we could enable the best possible selection mix, right? But why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because really when we look at it, counseling is very different from, or rather not just counseling, but therapy in general is very different from, psychotherapy is very different from medication, where medication, you could have one pill that fits quite a number of people. But when it comes to psychotherapy, it's really about the dynamics between you and the counselor or the therapist, the clinical psychologist, whatever they may be. The talk therapist needs to have a certain ability to build a rapport with you, right? And so in a lot of cases, this is difficult. But what we've done at Thoughtful is we try to lower the barrier, right? So because it's text-based, you could switch your counselors until you find somebody who's suitable. And because it's text-based, it's more cost-efficient, right? And then once you think that this person is more suitable for you, then you could go on to, you could proceed with, you know, maybe face-to-face, in-person, and so on, right? So at this point, that's the best. We are working on ways where we could improve the, you know, the algorithm so that it matches even more effectively for the different situations. But yeah, it's largely a work in progress, but I'd say it's really about, in some sense, to put it simply, it's really about chemistry. And sometimes there is time required, and with time comes cost. What we've done is we tried to alleviate the cost factor by pushing it up to the preventive side and by using technology, essentially. So yeah, that's a very good question.
Sorry, I think we'll have to move our conversation to the networking part. There is yeah, please go ahead, Ruth.
I think we were talking about it just before the session. What do you think about the stigma with all of this? I mean, it's great to have a room full of people that are so interactive, but I do think that there is a lot of stigma still attached, whether it's a child at that age, and by the way, you know, I have a child which is special needs as well, or it's at work, particularly in this market. So any thoughts from the panel on that?
Yeah, I think just briefly from my side, I think there's a really interesting trend that's starting to happen at the moment, right? Which is the kids are informing the parents, right? Yeah, it's happening in this room. Yeah? So often, like, I think that we also need to look at the demographics in this room. Like, a lot of you guys are, well, not you, but a lot of you guys are around my age. You're much younger. But at the demographic level, you know, we are all generally, you know, older millennials, in my case, Gen X is, you know, maybe a boomer here or two. We are the ones with the stigma. It's our generation. You know, the Gen Alphas and the Gen Zs that are coming up and the younger millennials are very well versed. We were talking about COVID and how this has become like such a hot topic. They are now influencing up through the generation. So I have a lot of faith, right? You know, in the way that things are moving. I think that, you know, it seems like an imperceptible drift, as they say, you know, it might feel like you've not done anything in 1 year, but look at what you've done and, you know, the progress that you've made in 5, to sort of paraphrase. So that's one thing. I think also that the national strategy for mental health that was announced in Singapore, I think it was January or February this year, is a really important step. So I think to your point as well, like tackling some of these issues at policy level is really going to help shine a light and help progress in this area.
I think just to add to that, I think also like stigma is a very real thing. And, you know, it's good that you've localized it. You said that, you know, millennials tend to have that more than the Gen Zs, and that's completely true, right? So I think there's 2 aspects to this, right? One is the internal aspect. We try our best to solve the external aspect, which is, you know, stigma is out there, so I'm going to go out there and educate people, talk about mental health and all that. But what about the internal stigma, right? So for example, when I come out here and I say, you know, I've struggled with depression, or when you go out there and say, you know, my kid has ADHD, or my kid has special needs, for instance, right? What is the feeling that you get when you're talking to people about this? You know, that reflecting on how you feel is probably the key to dealing with your own stigma and stigma externally as well. Because the first thought that usually comes in is that when I reveal these things, I'm putting myself lower than my peers, right? And it's a very powerful tool when you realize that this is what's happening. You understand the dynamics within you, and then you push back, right? It's like, no, I'm consciously going to say no, because just because I have these things doesn't make me below anyone else, right? And when we have that consciousness, then it becomes, educating other people becomes a lot easier. So I think that's really key. It's about recognizing the problem within you, and then looking for ways we could solve it within ourselves and then with other people as well.
Thank you. Sure.
I was just thinking if there is good conversation, can you keep it on rather than just...
Yeah, maybe what I'll do is, let's do it across coffee and, you know, some networking.
Yeah, just one thought. So I totally concur to most of the things, especially the one that a founder and an employee a lot of times wear different hats, and, you know, it's relevant. But I feel we over-glorify being a founder. And I mean, I've been a founder all my life, so I can totally, I mean, like, after you're a founder for 5 years or 3 years, you see there are employees who are working way better than you. And, you know, they put all the skin in the game. So I think it's more about personalities of high performers, medium performers, and low performers, and not really the hat of being a founder or a non-founder. And I think just that stigma actually increases the stress levels that a founder has. If you talk to founders 20, 30 years back, you know, who were doing business, they were rather happier than employees. And the reason for that was they were not justifying on the internet what they're doing. They were doing their job, and they were doing it really well. We see a lot of good businesses around. So I feel that that is one thing, and especially for like a lot of panels also, like I try to bring this point around that we should not be so glorified. It's rather inversely proportional to the mental stability that a founder has. So I think like it's better to just normalize it as a high-performing job. I don't think we're any different from a high-performing manager in a big tech.
This totally sounds like a conversation to have over there, right? Because that's opening up a can of worms. And it's also a matter of perception.
Yeah, maybe we'll wind up with one sentence or one word that you want to leave all of us with. as one
That's
thing
tough
that
because
you
I've
want-
said too many words. I think if there's just one thing, I would say, yeah, at the end of the day, I think the solution is about recognizing the problems when it comes to things like stigma, for instance, to recognize the problems within yourself, and then to alleviate the barrier between you and other people when it comes to building psychological safety. So it's about, it's about basically self-knowledge and relationships, if there's two words. See, I can't do one word.
Thank you. Self-knowledge and relationships.
My words are all going to fit on one hand.
Great.
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, that was
Perfect.
6.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. John has very kindly offered a 30-day free trial of Thoughtful. I don't know whether you caught it in the previous slide. I'll get that back. And women entrepreneurs in the room, please join us on Thai Women Program, which is the Thai Women pitch competition, which is happening. Last date for joining it is 30th, and the pitch is going to happen in August. You will get untold prizes. It's amazing. But let me tell you more afterwards. But before I go away, please again join me in thanking our two panelists. Thank you so much, Meredith and Dr. John. This was beyond fascinating. Thank you so much. Thank you.